You will notice that in this talk we're going to be a little more efficient, and that's necessary because we're going through the major arcana again. Go through starting the Fool at the Bardo. The Fool connects spheres 9 and 10, imagination and manifestation. Then we're going to go to the Magician, and the Magician balances, limits and purpose, justice and kindness. Then, so that's at the call. So we exit, we may have a fear of being judged by our ejection from the Bardo, from the formless, from the infinite. And so if we're using the Magician, then we know that we're from the above, we're at the Aleph, beginning, and we are going to have kindness, mercy, a sense of purpose, but limited by whatever limits it, and justice is understood at a deeper level, not about blame, punishment. Then we move to the High Priestess, and both the High Priestess and Empress are pulling the energy down, or moving the energy up, but on the left and right side. So you'll see how that plays out with the hexagrams. Just to show this visually, the Bardo, or we're going to begin our talk from the Bardo, and end our talk from the Bardo is the Fool. Then the Call, which is actually the beginning, that's the spring. That's where the Magician is balancing. Then for the Trial and the Return, we're bringing the energy on both sides of the tree, downward or upward. We're going to bring those spheres together, and then back to the Bardo again for the Fool. So this is the layout that we've chosen. It's sequential. If you've heard the other talks, then we have the Fool in the Call, the spring position, where the Magician now is, but now the Fool is in the Bardo. So the question that we're asking is a little more complex than questions we've asked earlier. At the Call, so where the Magician is, we're looking to see what helps us to accept confusion, or to help me accept confusion. That's essential. If we enter the Call, start a new day, begin a new cycle, not wanting to have confusion, then we want expert mind, which means we don't want beginner's mind, which means we're certain about things. And that brings the negative adaptive child, negative free child, negative controlling parent, negative nurturing parent, activates the Enneagram fixation in a negative way, and probably puts you on Cartman Trauma Triangle as a rescuer, victim, or persecutor, or labeling others with those roles. But if we accept confusion, then that's less likely to happen. We're just more receptive, not needing things to be different. You'll see there's 3 stars. The first star has to do with being accepting of the part of us that has aversion to confusion. There's also a part that likes confusion, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about a part of us that just doesn't want to accept confusion and may never, as long as you live, be okay with that. So we want to forgive and accept that part. And the confusion is often about, and in this context, it's about purpose versus limits. If we don't have a clearer sense of our purpose, or if our purpose is so tied up with fear and desire and ego and identity and linear time and the mundane and the material, then limits are going to probably come to help us move to a deeper purpose, which is more, let's just call it spiritual, more about compassion and unconditional self-acceptance, not about taking some kind of action or having some kind of role or identity. So the other 2 stars have to do with a practice called expanding beyond the suit. So you figure out what suit are you most defaulting to. For me, it's swords, ideas, air, hot air, all these talks. And so if I expand to the body with pentacles, or to emotions with cups, or to energetics with wands, kundalini sort of, chakra sort of, if I go to that, then I have a wider perspective, and that may help me shake free from the fixation with ideas and concepts. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see what information would be helpful to know about the magician's work of balancing purpose and limits, and then that will have a positive impact. So we got 54, and we'll talk about what 54 is. But then we got 37, and 37 relates to the High Priestess, which is the trial, which is bringing the tree of life energy up and down on one side, and the Empress is doing it on the other side. And so, then obviously balancing 4 and 5 is easier once the energy is brought down from higher on the tree. But this is happening after you've already been called and you're already in the trial. So unless the High Priestess and Empress can time travel, it's probably going to be during the trial and return. So the trial, there's aggression, attachment, agendas. Usually negative adaptive child, there's negative free child. If you don't accept confusion, then that's probably where you're at. We call it 5A, a few other A's. And then if that happens, it's more than likely that during the return, there's going to be judging, grasping, and regret. And then finally, we enter the bardo, and we exit the bardo. And that's with the Fool. And the only number I've memorized here is hexagram 15, so we know that humility is vital when we're trying to bring some cultivation of peace, patience, and balance to the imagination and to the manifestation. Humility is an important principle, obviously, and very difficult, especially if we've already rejected confusion. But if we have humility upon entering the bardo, then we're more likely to have it upon exiting the bardo, and then we're more likely to be able to accept confusion. And that's what happens with people who are awakened, is they've been able to find that positive feedback loop. Most people are in the negative feedback loop. They don't allow confusion, they're not humble, they don't allow confusion. So interesting, hexagram 54 is converting the maiden, the marrying maiden. This is a story of a younger sister who was maybe the second wife and not in a position to make things happen her way. A story, she runs away and comes back. It has to do with a little bit with duty and having obligations, so it's a little bit more skewing towards sphere 8 as opposed to sphere 7, which may mean that in terms of finding that balance of 4 and 5, that limits may be where the work is. And then if we don't allow confusion around the limits placed upon us, then we're going to not be in that positive feedback loop. We're not going to have humility. If we have humility, then we allow confusion around limits. We may even accept limits. It's just not easy for us to do. In any case, then we move to the trial. Whether, if we have allowed confusion, if we do have a bit of humility, if we have balance, purpose, and limits, well, then we may see, with the help of the Empress, that we can bring wisdom and creativity to our purpose. So, and that purpose can be in the context of family, clan, or staff, if you're in an office. That's what 37 relates to. And the story relates to how there's economic and interdependent factors in these situations, and that may supersede the emotional ties. A family or a clan or a staff may not have love for each other, but if they have economic and some kind of task-based interdependence, then that may be a sustainable system even without love. The two columns relate to the Tree of Life. You can see the spheres behind her, and she has the Torah, also reversed to Tarot, the law in her lap. And so, in this particular context, there are certain laws and modes of behavior that are conducive to creating interdependence in that system. So that if there is some degree of humility or no humility, if there is some degree of acceptance of being the younger sister, the converted maiden, not having power, then you may be able to fall into that interdependent system. This is not about codependency, but interdependent. Anyway, then at the return, when there's a possibility, especially if there's no humility and no conversion of the maiden, and no interdependence in the family system or the work system or the clan system, then we really want to find some understanding about limits and purpose so that we're doing less judging and grasping. And this hexagram relates to weaving images, providing for excess and enthusiasm. And I have to relate that to myself, because what have I been doing? These talks relating to images on the cards and trying to provide for myself and others some kind of system of healing and mindfulness and self-acceptance and compassion using the cards and using the I Ching. And I do tend to be a bit excessive and enthusiastic about it. It's one of the few things I still have enthusiasm for in life. I don't have the regular enthusiasm that other people have. For better or worse, I can't say, but this is my passion. And it's tied to contemplation, looking up, as opposed to needing to promote myself or being recognized for this. So back to humility again, and then if for me at least, if I'm balancing limits and purpose, I'm weaving images, I'm providing for without too much excess and enthusiasm, then I can find humility. Even if I have found excess and enthusiasm while weaving images, returning to the Fool, returning to humility, being willing to walk off the cliff and be guided and not have a care in the world or minimal cares, and allow the sun to be down on me. Remember, the sun card came up in the Bardo prior in a previous talk, and so we're attempting to not attempt. We're carrying very little on our backs, and we're not even looking where we're going. We're looking up. That's the contemplation.